I want to welcome everybody to our COLONTOWN project of Stories of Hope. We are a group of stage 4 colorectal cancer patients who are a part of the community in COLONTOWN, where we support each other, encourage each other, and work together on handling the different kinds of struggles and the ups and downs of our colorectal cancer experience. We're going to hear stories today from stage 4 colorectal cancer patients of hope to reach the no evidence of disease status, NED.
I'm so glad to be here to support Paltown and COLONTOWN. It's helped us so much. So my story is complicated, but I'll try to keep it short. At age 23, I was diagnosed with stage 4E non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with a bone marrow transplant from my twin sister that saved my life 30 years ago, May 24th. And then, unluckily, a 50-year-old colonoscopy determined an 8-centimeter tumor in my cecum. And through multiple colon resections and rounds of chemotherapy, FOLFOX first, I relapsed. And then I metastasized to my liver, my peritoneum momentum, and my bladder. And things were very bleak. And I got a small sign of hope with second-line irinotecan and Avastin. And I had a little bit of shrinkage. And that's when I found COLONTOWN in their High Pack Heights neighborhood, looking into this crazy mother of all surgeries with hot chemo bath. And I underwent that surgery in March of 2018. And I've been trying to put the pieces back together again with 3 NED scans starting in September of 19. And my next one is in June.
I will start by saying when I got diagnosed, I was, super healthy and have been healthy my entire life. I was 29 years old this past September. And I, lived a very healthy life in terms of like exercising with my family and eating right and using all the right products, not a lot of chemicals, and researching things to bring into our home that are safe. And I only had symptoms for 2 weeks this past August. And a lot of my friends are from the healthcare background, so they were like, it's just a hemorrhoid, because the only symptom I had was blood in my stool for 2 weeks in August, and I was away with my friends when it started happening, and they, were like, it's nothing, don't worry about it. But I was worried about it, and I, kept a close eye on it and monitored it for about 2 weeks before I saw my PCP, and they chalked it up as, you're young, it's nothing serious, it's probably just an internal hemorrhoid, but let's send you to a GI doctor just in case. So when I met with him, he saw the same thing and said, let's set you up for a colonoscopy. So about 7 days later, on September 11th, I had a colonoscopy at 29 years old and thought it was just, from what I heard, my friends that had had them before with, other health problems, it turned out to be nothing. So I went in thinking that it wasn't going to be a big deal and that I was going to go out to lunch with my husband after he picked me up. And it was a long time in the waiting room waiting for the doctor. And now I understand why, but he told me that there was a large concerning mass that he found, and he rushed a biopsy. And the next day on September 12th, my 13-month-old son walked for the first time in the morning. And by 4 p.m., I was told I had stage 4 cancer at 29 years old. So it was never something that I thought would ever happen to me or anyone in my age bracket. So it was totally like my whole world just kind of smashed right then and there, but it was the beginning of a fight.
I had that were about 2.5 centimeters in diameter, and I had my one in my right lobe that was 11.5 centimeters by 7 centimeters. And within a week, I started chemo. I'd gone in, I had 100% blockage. I was inoperable for the colon and liver, so they put an emergency stent in me. It was about 10 centimeters long over a 5 centimeter long mass they found in my sigmoidal colon. It was not good at first. It was very, thing running through my mind was I have 2 kids and a pregnant wife that's 6 months pregnant. What the heck am I going to do? My world was flipped. It was not fun. I went to a very dark place early on. Sorry. It was tough. It was very tough. It was been a healthy person. I used to run cross country. I used to work out. I mean, I was in the Navy. I mean, I did a lot of things. I thought, hey, I'm doing life right. And then what the hell just happened? Like, it literally, like, the floor just drops out from underneath you. It was very tough. And so it was very tough for my wife too. She's sitting there 6 months pregnant, has no idea what to expect. Like Alexa said, you hear stage 4, I think, oh gosh, I'm going to be dead within 6 months. And that was pretty much the trajectory I was on, come to find out many, many months later.
I've been thinking about this since you asked me, and I feel like I've been doing this forever. At this point, I don't even know if I remember my life before cancer, because when I was diagnosed, I felt like I put my foot on the pedal and I haven't stopped. I was treated for breast cancer in 2007. So I had a lumpectomy and radiation and 5 years of tamoxifen. I was followed by an oncologist having blood work every 3 months. I had just stopped the tamoxifen, and my next appointment was blood work with the oncologist, and I was showing that I was extremely anemic. So that was summer 2013, and he just recommended at the time to take some iron supplements and have my blood work checked in a few weeks. When I went back, my iron levels had gone back up, so I stopped the supplements, and the cycle went on for a couple times until he said, we probably need to figure out if you're losing blood somewhere. So he did. He gave me a fecal occult test to take home, and he did a quick internal exam, and everything at that point was still normal. He sent me for iron infusions, and that fecal occult test did come back positive. So he scheduled me for a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and that was in September of 2013. When I woke up from the colonoscopy, I could tell immediately the look in the GI's face was, it wasn't good. I was really out of it. I really don't remember the conversation. I just remember going home feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. I was scared. I'm getting teary. I don't do this very often anymore because it's been so long, but I'm fortunate. My brother-in-law is a cardiothoracic surgeon. My sister had called me right away to see how my colonoscopy went, and I told her it was not good, that I had to go for, other scans and testing. And my brother-in-law called my husband later that night and said, I'm here for you, whatever you need. I'm willing to help any way I can. If you want, if you don't want, tell me to go away, and I'm good either way. So, of course, we jumped all over that because I highly regard his expertise. He's an excellent surgeon. He's a brilliant man. He's just awesome, and I trusted my life with him. So he immediately got me appointments with a colorectal surgeon and a liver surgeon. This was after I did have scans that showed I had a tumor in my colon and I had tumors in my liver. So I was stage 4 right from the beginning. I was fortunate again in that I had a family friend whose husband had been diagnosed exactly almost the same way I was, about a year and a half prior to me. So I did have communications with him, and I was kind of following along with what was recommended to me. And I felt good that it was kind of the same thing that he was also having done or had done. He was being treated in Boston at Dana-Farber, and his wife was extremely helpful. She was a psychologist, and her father was some kind of doctor, food scientist. So she was really interested in the science of it too. So she got me started early on being interested. But It was hard. It was really hard. I felt when I was dealing with the breast cancer, I never for 1 minute thought I was going to die from that. It was awful, but I went through the treatments and I came out the other side, and I was okay. Um, my kids, I have 3 kids. My kids were, I think my son was in 7th grade at the time. My daughter, I have 2 daughters. My one daughter was a sophomore in high school, and my other daughter had just started her freshman year away at college. The hardest thing for me was telling them.
Um,
Um,
there are times that I've had, and I'm sure all of us have had similar discussions with people. My sister's a family medicine doctor, and she's not a cancer specialist, but she from the beginning kept saying, Lindsay, this is terminal. Lindsay, you're not going to live. This is not, Lindsay, you need to accept the fact. You need to prepare for this and this and this. And then, she's my sister. I respect her, and she's a physician. But I also had to, surround myself by folks who were cancer specialists and seek other opinions, even from my own family. And I know even now I get people, there's so much confusion around stage 4 once you are tumor free. Do you still have cancer? Are you cured, or what is that stat? Um, I just had surgery in March to remove the final tumors, and I'm on chemo. People were amazed that I had to do chemo after that because I'm tumor free. But the reality for a lot of stage 4 patients is that uh, the treatment continues, and there's always that kind of cloud over our heads that you know we have to always be thinking about our bodies and our health, and what can we do to best get through even being tumor free. they I've had people, I even had like other doctors say to me that, why do people keep saying that you'll get through this and all these positive things when they know it's a terminal diagnosis? And I kept saying, but it's not. I personally know people who have survived with this diagnosis for a long time. So I'm not focusing on how long I have, I'm focusing on the quality. And that's part of what has been such a gift to our community is um, just learning how to live in the now and do what we can and be empowered by each other to continue to live and find joy defiantly.
I was diagnosed actually initially with stage 3 colon cancer when I was 35 years old. So my husband and I had just moved to Western Massachusetts because I started a PhD program. And a couple months into that program, I started having some stomach cramping, kind of had continuing symptoms for about a year, and had a colonoscopy the day before Thanksgiving back in 2017. I remember waking up from that colonoscopy, hearing the doctor talking to the nurse kind of outside the little curtain area that I was in, asking the nurse if they had reached my husband yet. And he has Crohn's disease, so we were quite used to the colonoscopy procedure. So he was quite comfortable with, I'm going to go home and work for a couple of hours and just come pick you up when they call. And I think he was on a meeting or something at the time, so they hadn't been able to get him on the phone. And the doctor needed to leave. So she came in to that little curtained area and just told me I was by myself, and said that, she was very surprised, especially given my age, but it looked like a colon cancer mass. And she was actually surprised, they knew what my symptoms were, but she was surprised that I was, still even able to have been going to the bathroom or anything at all at that point, because it was almost a complete blockage. I had the CT scan the next week. Fortunately, at that point, it had not spread. So I was able to, just a week later, have surgery to remove that section of my colon. And then in January, started 6 months of FOLFOX. I stayed full time in classes. I took classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Every other week, Wednesday, I left my stats class halfway through, drove to the cancer center, got chemo, was on the pump until Friday, and then was back in class on Monday. So I did that for 6 months. My scan after chemo ended looked great. And then 6 months later, when I went in for my quarterly checkup, my blood work showed a rise in my CEA. And my doctor wanted to do a CT scan. We were wanting to wait probably to about the year mark was the plan, because I had only had one positive lymph node. My chances of a recurrence, they put at like 12% after I had finished treatment. So we weren't planning a CT scan originally, but because of the CEA rise, he wanted to go ahead and do that. I, at that point, was 1 week away from having to defend my dissertation proposal. So he said to me, we're doing the CT scan after you finish that. And he ordered me to go home and not to think about it, which I just kind of laughed in his face about that, because there was no way I was not going to spend every moment of that next week worried about whether or not the cancer was back. I actually remember, I think a couple days I was able to go home and work on my proposal. I was in this process where I had a very strict, like, I need to get this done each day. And I was able to do that some days, but I remember in particular, there was one day where I couldn't get it out of my head. The worry about whether or not the cancer was there, and I couldn't write, I couldn't work. And I just stopped and I went to COLONTOWN and I went to the Tough Chicks group and I just posted and said, hey, this is what's going on. I'm like, I just really need some encouragement right now. And I just remember how many people responded so quickly, just offering support and also offering advice on how to, kind of recenter myself, because at that point I knew I couldn't control what the CT was going to show, and I just needed to get through the next week. So I defended my proposal. 2 days later, did my CT scan. A few days after that, the doctor had told me he was just going to call me with the results, and I got a call from the office saying, the doctor wants you to come in tomorrow. So I kind of knew coming in meant that there was going to be cancer, and I didn't know how much. Fortunately, at that point, it looked like just one spot in my liver, which was, the best possible scenario for a recurrence at that point. He wanted to send me to Mass General in Boston. The week after that, we find out it's actually 4 spots. And they didn't want to proceed with surgery because they were concerned about whether or not chemo was working for me, whether there might be more that we just aren't even seeing on the MRI. So they wanted to start with chemo. So we started with FOLFIRI and Erbitux. Again, kind of going for the big guns, with, given my age, given my otherwise healthy status, I found FOLFIRI and Erbitux to be a lot more difficult than FOLFOX was overall. The digestive systems with FOLFIRI, I had a really, really awful reaction with the rash on Erbitux. So it was tough. That few months, those first 4 or 5 rounds of that treatment before we did a PET scan to find out whether it was working, was probably the most mentally challenging time that I've ever had, because it was just a time where I felt so much doubt about whether or not the treatment was going to work, and if it didn't work, what that was going to mean.
In the spring of 2014, I wasn't feeling well. I wasn't really sick, but I just wasn't well. I didn't have any real symptoms except that I felt full a lot. Something wasn't right. And it got worse. I was losing weight for no particular reason. I had it to lose, so I was like, yay, but it wasn't good. Something was happening. And by the end of June, my husband said, "You need to go in. Something's wrong." And I said, "Well, I have my yearly doctor appointment in July, beginning part of July, middle of July. I'll talk to her about it then." And I did. And I explained what was going on. And she was concerned. And she did the fecal occult sample, and there was blood. Her immediate reaction was, "I'm a teacher. I'm pretty high stress. I kind of carry my stress all the time." And she wondered if it was something like a Crohn's or a colitis, inflammation that way. And she sent me off to have a CT. Well, yeah, she wanted me to have a CT scan. I was so dehydrated, they couldn't get a needle set to be able, an IV set to be able to do contrast. So right away, lots of bells and whistles going off that something's not right. They finally did the CT without contrast, and their first thing they saw was I had all these spots on my liver. And that was concerning, but they didn't know what that was about because that didn't match up with the symptoms I was having. And so she felt the best next step was colonoscopy just to make sure, but she still was really leaning towards it being Crohn's or colitis. At the time, I had just turned 40 years old. I had a 6-year-old at home. So it just, colon cancer wasn't on her radar really at all. And I went in for the colonoscopy. My husband had to work, so my parents took me, and because I needed a ride. And after the procedure, the GI came in and he said, "I am really, really sorry I have to tell you this. Like, this is the last thing that anybody thought it was going to be." And he said, "And now I'm really scared for what's going on with your liver." And I was very lucky because I was still kind of in that like sleepy zone, and they were able to take me right up and do a liver biopsy like on the spot. So they did the liver biopsy right away. I could hear the guy doing the biopsy going, this isn't good. And of course, everything came back. Stage 4 colon cancer, mets to the liver. Now we need to see like where else it is and what's going on. We got to get you into oncology. We got to get a port set. We have to do all these things. And it happened so fast. Like my colonoscopy was on a Friday, and I had a diagnosis that night. They like called me and told me what was going on. And Monday I went to a training because I was a teacher and it was summer and I was doing, professional development about some programming we were going to start that next school year. I was there and I told my principal what was going on. I said, "I was just diagnosed with cancer, so I don't really know what that means." But he's like, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, because this is my normal. I have to do normal right now. I can't sit home and worry about this. I got to do normal." So I sat in training. I was supposed to be in training the next day, and they said, no, we're getting you in to see the oncologist. That Monday night, the GI surgeon over the weekend had talked to a phenomenal liver surgeon out of UW-Madison, who is now Howard at UW-Michigan. Jealous. He's a very, very awesome guy. His name is Dr. Clifford Cho. And he, my local GI had talked to him, put my case in front of him and said, "This girl is 40 years old. She's perfectly healthy. Her liver's in big trouble. Like, what do we do?" And so when I saw the oncologist that Tuesday, he was under the impression that I was not a surgical candidate at all. I was inoperable, incurable. Like it was not good. And in the meantime, the GI guy called him while I was there in the office and said, "Hey, this guy, Madison, he'd like to take her on as a liver candidate." And they all felt very strongly that my liver was actually probably the scariest part of what was going on, that if they didn't do something to my liver, that would kill me far before the colon cancer could do that. I had over 70% involvement in my liver.
I was diagnosed stage 4 in 2013. I was 51 years old. At 50 years old, I went for a colonoscopy because I do what I'm supposed to do and do all my tests. And that was clear. They didn't find anything. And I had kind of a stressful year in previous couple years. So I had some increased stool and a little bit of blood and just was super tired. I thought, wow, 51 is hard. And I went to the doctor. I had developed a little bit of pain around my pelvic area. And I went in, and I thought it was probably maybe my ovaries or something, because I had a colonoscopy, and they did a CT scan, and they said, "Oh, you've got lots of spots in your liver, but you got one spot that looks different than the other spots. So let's do an MRI." So then I did an MRI. Same story. Then let's do a biopsy. And this is now 2 months later, and I got a phone call, and he said, "I hate to do this over the phone, but you have stage 4 colorectal cancer, and we need to go find the colon tumor now." So that was in 2013, right before Thanksgiving. And that week I had a PET scan, a colonoscopy, met an oncologist, started treatment, did 8 rounds of Folfox. Then I had a colon resection and a liver resection with a temporary ileostomy. Had that reversed, and I did 4 more of the Folfox, and I was NED for about 2.5 years. And I was kind of floundering to find a purpose. I did not know COLONTOWN, and I found it in 2016, and it was a great connection at that point. I kind of found a purpose in my life, and I started educating myself. And at that point, I was starting to get a little bit more blood in my stool again. And I kept telling them, something's not right. This is what I had before. And they kept saying there's nothing there. And 2017, I had a recurrence, a localized recurrence. And I had radiation at that time. And then I had a permanent colostomy. And that was September of 2017. And then in December of 2017, a liver met showed up. And in January of 2018, I had my second liver resection. And then I did Solota for 6 months and finished that in July of 2018. And I've been NED since that last resection.
Thank you for sharing that. Can you share with us one experience that has really stuck out to you in your ongoing treatment through all of that, multiple chemos and surgery? What is one moment that stuck out to you as being a game changer for you?
Well, there's multiple game changers, but the biggest game changer was this cytoreductive surgery with chemo. That it was hot chemo, and it was an 11-hour surgery that basically debulked live and dead cancer cells, basically like deboning a fish, and then pouring in hot chemo and being like a rotisserie chicken called a shake and bake, so that the hot chemo could potentially be the cherry on top and kill micro cancer cell. And amazingly hard surgery, amazingly tough recovery, and I've been building back since then. It's but that I can directly say I believe saved my life.
But what has been some of the lower points that have kind of been the hardest part to get through this?
My darkest day was when I got a call for a diagnosis. I wasn't even in an office with the doctor, and he wasn't even an oncologist. It was this GI doctor that said, I really trust this radiologist, and he sees stuff in your liver, so yeah, you have stage 4 cancer. I mean, at 29, my whole life I was, I believed that when people got stage 4 cancer, they died within like 6 months. That's kind of what I thought, where I thought I was going. And in that moment, I just felt so hopeless, and so like I just was so confused as to how this happened. I got a young family that I had to fight for, and I just, in that moment, I had no plan at that point yet. In the coming days, the plan was put together, but I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And everything you can imagine as a young mother or a young parent, like I didn't know if I was going to live to see my child enter kindergarten. It was really, really hard and the worst day of my life. But every day from that point on, I continued to get good news. Like I landed an amazing oncologist at Dana-Farber and an incredible medical team of surgeons at MGH. And they just gave me so much hope that, I was going to live a long, normal life and that we were going for the cure here. So those words that my oncologist said to me, I'll never forget them. And, he sat me down and he said, "Alexa, you may have stage 4 cancer, but you have stage 4A, and it only went to one other location. So we're going for the cure here. And he's like, you're 29. We're going to give you the strongest chemo we have. So I was so happy that I had that second opinion, because my original oncologist wanted to put me on something of a lesser, dose or regimen. And when my second opinion at Dana-Farber told me that we're going on FOLFOXIRI, and I read up a lot up on it and how strong it was, I just felt so confident that we're going to push through and we're going to get through this. So it was just like so hopeful in the days that followed that horrible day. But I would say that's definitely my darkest day that I had throughout my entire battle.
And he changed my whole cancer experience. It was really huge what he had showed me, what he suggested, kind of some of the science behind it. By nature, I make maps for a living, so I'm a very analytical guy. I'm a GIS analyst, and so I'm all about science and stuff. And I also study anthropology quite a bit. And so I'm just this integrative med doctor. I'm very open-minded. I just went with what he said, and that's when things just started to turn around a lot. One of them was the integrative medicine doctor that I saw. That was a huge game changer for me, and it just happened to coincide with me joining a stage 4 colon cancer group, and then from there, people were talking about COLONTOWN, and so all within like a couple of weeks, I'd seen an integrative medicine doctor. It started a meditation that ended up really helping me. That was a huge game changer. I was never a big believer in, like the mind, using your mind to help you. I would have laughed at meditation before, and something I did, I connected with something. People call it different things, but I really connected, and it was healing for me. And from there, kind of with these groups, especially COLONTOWN, you just start to get other information. You start to look into like, okay, what's my situation? What can I do for myself, kind of, which led me ultimately after those 11 cycles of FOLFOX, I ended up having an additional 4 of FOLFIRI with Vextabix, which is very similar to what you had, and that stuff will just wreck you. That's kind of when I had another big moment was when it was this January, or actually, let me rewind. It was November 2019. I had another set of CT scans done, and they said that my oncologist said that there was a couple spots that showed up on my lungs, but that everything else had pretty much, we can't see it, or what we see, we don't know what the status is. We biopsied it. There's, no signs of malignancy within the biopsies. And all of a sudden these 2 things pop back up on the scan. And I told her I had a kind of an upper respiratory type thing going on at the time. And she's like, okay, well, we're going to throw you back on the FOLFIRI with the Vextabix. And I'm just like, okay. That pretty much started a bad series of events for me. My stent started to fail. And let's see, January, she started saying, I brought up the possibility of resection surgery, because I was told chemo for life. I'll never be a candidate. You'll never be operated on. If you do, it's for palliative reasons only. And I was just like, well, why? If things are shrinking, I need to get a second opinion. And I got excellent doctors, but she's also not a surgeon. And the best part about the thing of hope that got me was seeing the second opinion. I mean, I'm in a great cancer institute, but, through COLONTOWN, I met people who like, you got to go see Dr. Fong. Fortunately, my sister lived like 25 minutes from her. So I had a place out there to recover the surgery. And he told me his surgery, only about 10 to 15% of people qualify for it, and that it's with curative intent. That's when I was just like floored, like, holy crap, why didn't I, seek this out earlier? Like, what's going on? Like, is this guy telling me that my odds are going to be flipped again, but this time in a good way? And so I jumped all over it. I mean, my kids have been my motivator this whole time. I mean, I live for them and my wife. And it was going to get that second opinion. It changed my life. And the pathology report back, that even just solidified my decision that much more. They told me that I had a complete pathological response to chemotherapy. And of the less than 1% remaining, I had 99% of that was tumor necrosis, and they removed the rest with the surgery. And I had never seen a doctor smile so big, especially he called me his unicorn patient, and that meant a lot.
My doctors were all positive from day one. I think that helped me be okay with doing what they told me to do. Very aggressive. My liver surgeon, my oncologist, they both used the word cure more than once. So I felt confident and comfortable. I've had 7 surgeries, 24 cycles of chemo. I've had ablation. I've had radiation. I've done supplements. I've done meditation. I've prayed. I've exercised. I use essential oils. I've changed my diet. You name it, I've done it all. And I feel very fortunate that I've have family and friends who were able to guide me initially. I feel like they were my circle of online support initially, not being online. I was very private in the beginning. It wasn't until I met Erica in 2016, and I met several other people in person that I had been talking to online. And that was a defining moment, to actually meet someone and hug them in person that you have been talking to or chatting with or sharing, stories with online. It was overwhelming, and it's addicting. You just want to keep doing that. And I started going to symposiums. I went to Dr. Marshall's symposium at Georgetown in 2016. And that's when I really got the bug for learning more and learning everything possible there is to learn about this disease. Just getting more involved with COLONTOWN, it really kind of brought me out slowly, brought me out more to be more public with my experience and being able to share and help. And really that's my goal, is if I can help one person, it's all worth it.
A couple weeks ago, had my 6-month checkup, had the CT scan, and am still no evidence of disease. It's a little different right now because of coronavirus and some restrictions on doing research at the moment, but I've been doing field work and traveling for that research. I've been teaching in my classes. I teach seniors at our college. So I've been focusing a lot on that. I've been able to return to work. I've been able to build back up into a really good exercise routine where I'm working out every single day pretty much, and just living life as much as I can.
And in November of 2015, I stopped chemo. I never had another scan show cancer after my final surgery in February of 2015. So I have passed the 5-year mark for surgical, like them having removed everything. I will pass the 5-year mark of no more cancer, no more chemo, no more anything this November. So that's a super exciting thing for us, because they gave me 3 years when they first diagnosed me. And my first, that was probably my lowest and hardest moment when he said 3 years. I went, my son will be 9. No, I lost my mind a little bit. And I think we've just worked really hard at, working for what we can change and what we can do. And I know, like, for me, COLONTOWN was just an amazing resource. I needed people. I needed, like Lauren said, I needed people that understood and could help and give you some extra things. And so I know I have followed many of you throughout this, but I am not as vocal probably within the group, but I've had some really cool opportunities. COLONTOWN sent me to Washington, D.C. to talk to congressmen and about some bills to pass on scanning for right scan, right time. And it's just been cool. I just love, I think that's the teacher in me. I see teaching moments and like everything. And this is it. Like I've seen that, even if it's just local or kids, my students who come to me, my grandma has cancer. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's, and being able to like support them as a survivor, as somebody who's been there, and like what can help, and every situation's different, but those kinds of things have been really positive.
What kind of opportunities have you had as you have been recovering over the last years or so?
The high point is the support. I have, through COLONTOWN, been guided with some unbelievable mentors, which I call my cancer whisperers, and they have supported me through these last 4 years. And I also do the same. I actually then also become a cancer whisperer to lots of folks in COLONTOWN, trying to guide them on the journey.
What is one thing that you hope to accomplish in the future that you have not yet been able to get to as you recover? Is there a goal you have in mind?
I do want to get back to work. I want to walk my daughter down the aisle, because it wasn't a given that I'd see her graduate high school. And I basically, the way I've been doing that is I'm playing basketball again, except for COVID, and I'm being athletic. I'm not eating as healthy as I should because I need to gain weight, but I'm going to get there. Mental toughness, the support of all of us together, and just educating others about preventative and getting screened, and walking, being able to be an inspiration to others is what I'm going to do moving forward.
I kind of have two different buckets. One, with my family, of course, like my goal is to just live a long, healthy life with them, and to have a normal, happy life that we did, prior to September 2019. On the other side of it, just spreading awareness is so important to me. I've had 2 really quick bouts of being on the news throughout my cancer journey, and it was just really awesome just to share, what I've been through. And then being so very active on social media with Instagram, I found so many, I know Howard mentioned, I think he called them cancer whisperers. I found my angels online that have really helped me through it all. And in doing so and sharing my own battle, I've had so many people reach out to me saying that I've helped them in some small way just by sharing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I want to continue to do that to help people who are newly diagnosed. And I find so much joy in people messaging me every single day, asking me, what my symptoms were, how'd you get through it? Just the simple questions that we all, ask each other, and, things that we see in COLONTOWN. Something that's really big on my vision board, and I really want to start trying to fight for this come fall, is I just feel like parts of their healthcare system, especially with PCPs, it fails so many in the beginning. I mean, I was given a badge of great health a month before my diagnosis from my PCP. I had cancer the whole time I was pregnant with my son, went completely undiagnosed, even with all the blood work and the ultrasounds and everything. So I just really want to fight for colonoscopies at a younger age. And if that's not going to get passed by, Massachusetts, the State House, at least some more blood work that can be done when we see our, go for our annual physical, because it wasn't until recently that I was made aware that it really just catches things like anemia and blood cancer. But unless you're doing a full blood panel, you miss so much of the story. I had a whole metabolic panel, and my liver, with all the cancer it had, was perfectly operating just normal. So I think that fighting for screening and, just making people aware of this disease happening to younger population is so very important. And that's definitely what I'm going to fight for. I just knew that I had to get through this for my young family, and I refused to believe anything other than getting to NED.
Going forward, of course, I want to spend so much time with my family now that I've basically been given a second chance at life. But I also want to help others by doing the research aspect. Any way I can help. I want to help people. That's my big thing now, is I want to help people.
I still hold my breath because you just never know. And I'm afraid to do that, thinking that once I do, something will happen. So it's almost like a defense mechanism. I'm afraid to have that joy. Even sometimes I'm afraid to be happy because I'm afraid that it's going to end. And I've been able to spend a lot of quality time with my family, and that's the most important thing to me.
One thing that I struggled with when I was diagnosed at stage 4, that was especially different for me than at stage 3, because at stage 3, there was a very clear cut plan of what treatment looks like. You knew exactly what the next 6-7 months were going to be. And when I first was diagnosed at stage 4, there was 4 months of uncertainty, and potentially more. And I struggled with that a lot, especially because I am a planner. I like to plan out what my semester is going to look like, what my school year is going to look like, what I need to be doing to get to graduation. I have all these plans, and I didn't know how to plan within these confines. And one thing that my oncologist said to me that helped me a lot with that when I was sharing this with him was he told me to plan my life, to plan the things that I wanted to do. And if he felt those plans were interfering with the treatment, he'd let me know. One moment that I remember was about a month after I'd been diagnosed with my recurrence. I was talking to a friend who had battled breast cancer, and she said to me, "How are you feeling now that you're stage 4?" And I started crying because no one had asked me that. Aside from my online community with COLONTOWN, I don't know very many people in my day-to-day life that have gone through cancer and have been part of a cancer community. And I think that people either didn't know to ask that question or were afraid to. And it made me realize how important having that cancer community support is, whether it be through the online group in COLONTOWN or going to in-person opportunities like with the EPL workshops, or just generally in your local community. How important it is to find those people who you can talk to about what it's like to be living with and after cancer.
I had a friend very early on when this was all starting. I kind of was in a low point, and I just said, is it worth it? If all I get is 3 years, is it worth all the nasty of the chemo and everything else? Like, I want 3 really good years with my kid if that's all I get. And she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, but 3 years from now, you have no idea what might be on the plate. Like, you don't know what they're going to figure out in the next 3 years. So you have to do these 3 years the best you can so that you get the next 3 and then the next 3." And I've kind of clung to that. Every time I get into a spot where I'm like, gosh, why are we going through all of this? This is just horrible. I always remember her telling me, "Yeah, but then you get 3 more. And then there's 3 more," so it's that. It does feel like Marie said, where you're going scan to scan to scan. And it is that little bit of hold your breath. Okay, now I can breathe, but we get to breathe, so those little, getting those in there, that's awesome. Marie, I feel for you, because I was on every 6 months, but I just, this last time in January, when I had my last set of scans, he said to me, he goes, this is 5 years, and he goes, "You're doing really great, and there's been nothing, everything's really stable. Let's bump you to a year." And it was this huge celebration, to be able to say, I don't have to have another scan for a whole year. That feels crazy to me, because it's been such a normal part of our lives for the last 5. Every 6 months I go get the scan, and that scan anxiety, it's real and it's hard. So it's listening to all of your stories, I'm like, yep, I've been there for a little bit of everything, of all of it. So this has been a cool opportunity. Thank you again for having me.
I really think finding COLONTOWN was just huge to me. It really gave me purpose. It's a reason, I feel like it's a reason why I had cancer, or I have it still. I'm pretty much an introvert, and I've done things since joining COLONTOWN and having cancer that I never would have dreamed I've done more traveling. I've gone to conferences that I never had the opportunity to do, workshops, symposiums, this kind of stuff. It's really changed things. And I've educated myself about my disease, and is watching other people find their purpose, and connecting people, And, you know, people come in so scared, and I understand. I mean, I was totally terrified. But once you get educated and you become empowered, you're a little less afraid. I like to see more people get involved. It, you know, it can be whatever you want it to be. You can give as little time and as much time as you want. And people bring lots of different things to the table. I would like people to look at what they did in their lives before cancer, and maybe they can incorporate that into Colontown.
I want to thank everybody for your patience and your participation today in our project on Stories of Hope. I hope that through this experience and through participating in this project that you will be empowered and given a glimmer of hope that we experience in our community at Colontown. Just know that no matter what you face in your colorectal cancer treatment and in the processes that you face in the next days, that we're always able to be better together, and that we have a community that can at least hold your hand as we go through the different treatments and the different challenges that we face with this disease. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.